What's going on, guys? Stefan here with you, S&E's Garage. Today we are here with a customer's 2013 Hyundai Sonata. The car's got about 100,000 miles on it, and it's here for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, he's got some headlight bulbs out that he wants changed. And he's got a pretty bad rattling noise in the front end going over bumps that he wants looked at. And he just wants us to go over this, whole car, give him a full picture and let him know exactly what the car needs, what it's behind on, and what should be done to get it current as far as maintenance and repairs are concerned. So the first step on any repair on a car is to verify the customer's complaint. So he is complaining of a rattling noise in the front end, and before I even jack this car up and look at it, we want to go take it for a ride and verify that we hear that. Now, these cars are very well known for what's called the steering column coupler that goes bad. If you shimmy the wheel back and forth, you'll hear it click, click, click. So that's the first thing I'm going to do when I get in here. I'm going to wiggle this wheel back and forth and see if that's his noise. That is not. This steering column is nice and tight. So let's go ahead, put the car in drive, and we're just going to go take it for a little ride, find some bumps, and see if we can hear his rattle noise. And if we can verify it, that's going to give us a couple of different clues. You want to listen to the kind of noise it is and exactly what corner of the car it's coming from. These are very well known for sway bar end links, and also at 99,000 miles, you might suspect ball joints or maybe strut mounts. So we want to listen for our noise, and we want to see if we hear it up closer, behind the dash, or if we hear it more in the floor. Because if it's more in the dashboard area, we're gonna kind of look in a different route than ball joints or end links. So let's just go find some bumps. Oh, there we go. That didn't take long at all. You hear it? And you'll hear, if we rock the car back and forth, in other words, we make the car sway, the noise is also there. So right away in my mind, I'm thinking sway bar end links. They were pretty well known for this. Another issue that these can have is broken springs. So when we get this into the shop, we are going to pull the wheels and we're going to check the whole front end out. We're going to check our tie rod ends. We're going to check our sway bar end links. We're going to check our springs. And like I said, we're going to give this car a really good once over. But we have done our first step in the repair process, which is to verify the customer's repair. We do hear the noise, and we do know it's there. Now, at this mileage, 99,000 miles, he's going to be due for a couple of different services, and I'm gonna bring these up to him and see what he wants to do. It's definitely due for a transmission drain and fill if it's never been done. Any further than 100,000 miles, I would generally steer away from touching it, but we're still in the safe range of doing it. So I am going to recommend a trans service. I'm going to recommend the cooling system service, drain and fill, with Hyundai genuine coolant and distilled water, 50-50 mix. And I'm also going to recommend a set of 4 spark plugs. These are iridium, and you should generally change them around 100,000 miles. And those are rather important services. Spark plugs are going to affect fuel economy and engine performance. The cooling system is going to affect the way the engine, is cooled. You want it to be cooled efficiently, and it could also cause corrosion if those corrosion inhibitors in the coolant are no longer active. And then obviously the transmission, that's self-explanatory. That was a good bump, we heard it there. We don't want this transmission to grenade itself. These transmissions have, a very good track record. I've only done maybe 1 or 2 of these transmissions in my career, so these transmissions are rather good. But this vehicle is equipped with Hyundai's notorious Theta 2 engine. So we do just want to listen, make sure we don't hear any knocking out of the engine or any rattling noises, and this one sounds pretty healthy. So with that being said, I don't know if I'm going to get to it today, but let's get this car in the shop. Let's jack the front end up. We'll before we pull the wheels, we'll shake the wheels at 12 and 6 and 10 and 2, see if we feel any kind of play or noises, and then pull the wheels, check the springs, check the strut mounts, check the end links, check the ball joints. While we have the wheels off, obviously, we're going to check the brakes, and we're really just going to go over this car from bumper to bumper and give our customer here the full picture on what this car needs. And obviously, when I do this for a customer, I do prioritize. Obviously, if we find a bunch of things wrong that need repair immediately, like brakes or, you know, the suspension, things like that, I will tell him that we can push those other services that I mentioned to the next service interval. Though I wouldn't recommend it if he can only afford to fix what needs to be fixed. You know, you have to prioritize a customer's needs and let them know what needs to be done and what should be done. So let's get this thing, like I said, let's get it back to the shop. Let's get the front end off the ground, and let's see where we're at. All right, guys, so here we are in the 13YF Sonata. And the first thing I'll do when I get in the car and I'm getting ready to inspect it, you know, do my multi-point inspection, I'm going to turn the air conditioning on. I'm going to make sure the air conditioning's nice and cold. I'm going to pay attention to things like that. And this air conditioning is getting nice and cold, so we know there is an adequate charge in the system. And then another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the wipers. And I'm going to let them wipe the windshield. I'm going to inspect their wipe pattern. I'm going to make sure there's no rips or tears in the blades. And that's going to tell me a lot. Right now, I'm already checking things before I'm even getting out of the car. So what we're going to go ahead and do now, we're going to get this thing set up. I'm going to get it in the garage. And I'm going to show you the first thing I check once I'm on the outside of the car. Alright guys, so here we are outside of the YF Sonata. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of take a walk around the car. I'm going to look for things that are maybe out of place, maybe some broken trim pieces, you know, body damage, things like that. And I'm going to write it down. I'm going to notate it. That way we know that it was there before we touch the car. Not that I'm accusing anybody of blaming me for anything, but this is just something that's a habit of mine from the dealership. So we will just walk around the car, make a note of anything. I don't see anything too crazy. There was a little ding on the back door there, and I'm pretty sure there's some scuffs on the back bumper. But again, this is just covering my own butt and the dealership's own butt. So you will see we do have some scrapes over here. We are going to notate that. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do my light inspection. So I'm going to turn on my headlights. We have to turn the ignition on these cars for the headlights to turn on. Okay, and we're going to take another walk around the car and we're going to inspect the lights. So right away, we already see we have a left headlight out. That marker light's good. That marker light's good. This headlight's out. Let's go ahead and turn the fog lights on, check the fog lights. I'm going to flick on the high beams after we do that. So to turn the fog lights on this car, you simply rotate that forward, and now the fog lights should be on. And it would appear that we have no fog lights, so that's something else we're going to have to look into. Make sure I did that right. Yeah, the fog lights should be on. There's the indicator for them right there, so we're going to have to look into that. We're going to make a note of that. We're going to check the tail lights. Right away, I already see it's got some tail lights out too. Let's get around the back. So you'll see here, this light's on here. This light's on here. We have a marker light out right here. And this side we have no tail lights. This light's out, and this light's out, and that light's out. So we have some tail lights out. Let's go ahead, hit the brakes. We're going to look for a reflection in the garage door. We see all three brake lights are lit up. So we are just going to notate here that we have some tail lights out on this left side and one on the right side. One last thing we want to check is the license plate lights. To check them, I'll usually just stick my hand under here. You'll see right now we have no license plate lights as well. We're very quickly going to put our hazard lights on. We're going to check our blinkers. You'll see both turn signals, mirrors are working. Both front turn signals are working. Rear turn signals, both working. The only other lights we have to check are the reverse lights. Okay, let's turn the hazards off. Let's see what kind of reverse action we have here. They are both good. Alright guys, so now that we went ahead, we did our light check, we're able to turn the lights on in the garage. So now we're going to start with our under hood. We're just going to inspect our fluid levels, so let me take you with me here. So, first thing we're going to do is just give it a visual. You're going to see our washer fluid's low. We're going to open that up, make sure we remember. Coolant can be topped off, but again, if you remember what I said before, this is going to be due for a coolant service. So we're probably going to leave that alone and see, exactly what the customer here wants to do. We're going to look at our brake fluid, and just by how low our brake fluid is here, you can see here's the max. It's all the way down here. We are going to suspect that this thing is likely going to need brakes, because the only place that brake fluid is going to go if there's no leak is into the calipers to fill up, the fluid gap as the pads wear. So we are definitely going to be looking for worn brake pads. We're just going to come over here. We're going to inspect our belt. We're going to look down here into the grooves. We don't see any cracks or missing grooves, so everything looks okay there. A common misconception here is that you need to replace your belt every so often. I don't agree with that. If the belt does not show any signs of wear, if it's not squealing when you start the car, indicating that it's stretched, and it overall looks okay, I don't recommend these unless I see a reason to. So I'm not going to say anything about this belt. This belt is in good shape. So let's get you set up on the tripod. We're going to go ahead, we're going to check the oil, we're going to check our cabin filter, and we're just going to, like I said, we're going to give this thing a good once over and see if we notice anything. Now we are going to notice this car does have an orange dipstick, so it has had at least one of the engine recalls done. I believe this was the 162 on these that we did the microphone inspection and changed out the dipstick. So that's a good sign. So we're going to go ahead, wipe this clean with our dirty shop rag. Put it in. And you'll see oil's pretty dark, and it's not at the full mark. It's about maybe a half quart to 3/4 of a quart low. So we are going to make a notation of that. It is still within the acceptable range, but just hardly. So we're, like I said, it's not due for an oil change yet, so this engine is likely burning a little bit of oil. They are known for that. So we're good there. We're going to go ahead, check the engine filter. What I like to do is set this airbox lid right on top of the master cylinder like that, so that we can go ahead and pull this filter out. You'll see the filter is pretty dirty. I am probably going to recommend one of them. If you pull these cleats apart, you can just see there's a decent amount of dirt and grime trapped in there. So we're going to go ahead and add that to our list. We're going to go ahead, pull our engine cover off. This pops right up. We're just going to check the top of the coils for any rodent damage, and we are going to inspect for valve cover leaks. So let's go ahead, grab our flashlight here, and we're just going to inspect the valve cover. I don't see any signs of leaks here. At least top side, I don't see anything. The front cover looks to be okay. And overall, everything seems to be all right under here. Like I said, we are going to recommend that filter. We are suspecting some brake wear, so we are going to check that. And it's a little bit low on oil. So the next thing we're going to be doing here is checking our cabin filter. Super easy on these cars. You open the glove box, and on the side of the glove box, there's going to be two little twist screws. They look something like this. Twist them, pull them out. So there's going to be one on each side. And then we have a strut here on the side of the glove box that you just pop off like that. The whole glove box drops, and then under here is an access door. You pinch the one side here, pull it out, and we're going to go ahead, pull our cabin filter. You'll see it's dirty. I would recommend replacement if this was my vehicle, but it's not the worst I've seen. So we're just going to take some of this loose debris here, get it out of the way. That way we can put this back in without it, falling into the airbox assembly, because it can throw that blower motor off balance and start making some noises, and we don't want that, especially if the customer decides they don't want to replace it. So we're going to go ahead, stick that back in. This is an aftermarket filter. You can just tell by the way it's going in. It doesn't fit as well as it should. So now we're going to go ahead, put these two screws that I showed you back in. One here. One here. And we are going to make sure that we reconnect that strut. Keep that in here. All right. All right, guys, so now we're on to the main reason this car is here. As part of our multi-point inspection, we check the front end out on all the vehicles we look at anyway. But we're going to go ahead, especially because we know we have some noise issues in the front of this car, and we're going to check this front end a little bit more thoroughly. So the first thing I'm going to do before I even pull the wheels is I'm going to look at how these tires are wearing. And he is definitely in need of tires. If you look here, we are already up to the wear bars on these tires. You'll see the wear bar right here, and we're just about even with them. That indicates that these tires are worn to 2/32. So we are definitely going to tell them that we need tires, but they don't look to be wearing unevenly. It seems pretty uniform across the tread, but we're just going to give this thing a shake here, side to side. I don't feel any play there. We're going to go 12 and 6. There's no play there. We're looking at our spring. Like I said before, these are known for spring issues, so we are just going to go ahead, check our strut. You'll see our spring is in one place. They usually break right down here. That looks good. You'll see our dust boot for the strut is okay. Our bump stop underneath is broken. That's not really that big of a deal, and we don't see any leakage coming down from the strut. So these struts seem to be okay on this side. We're going to do the same thing over here. Going to inspect this spring and strut. Does not appear to be broken. Bump stops all the way up top. No leaks. Dust boot's okay. Go ahead, set you back up on the tripod. We're going to check this wheel. We're going to give it a wiggle. See what we got. Give it a shake side to side, top to bottom. So what this is indicating to me is that our inner and outer tie rods are okay. And if we have nothing up and down, that means our wheel bearings are okay. And most likely our ball joint is going to be okay. There's a little bit of a better way to check the ball joint once the tires are off that I'm going to show you. So let me go ahead, fire up the air compressor. We're going to zip these tires off. And we're going to give the whole front of this car a very thorough inspection. We're going to check the brakes. We're going to check the ball joints like I said. We're going to check the sway bar end links. We're going to go over the whole front end. So to pull these wheels off, you're going to need either an impact gun and a 21mm impact socket, or you just need a 21mm socket with a breaker bar. Now, if you don't have an impact gun, you're definitely going to want to break these lug nuts loose before you jack the car up, otherwise the wheel's just going to spin. But we have a gun, so we're just going to go ahead, zip these right off. I always like to stick the wheels under the car. That way, should the car fall off of the jack stands, it's going to land on the wheels and it's going to give me a little bit of a safety cushion. So let me go ahead and take the other wheel off. We'll get to the inspection of the brake assembly and the end links, things like that. So while we have the tires off, we're going to use our tread depth gauge here. And what I am going to do, I'm going to add all of these tools to my Amazon affiliate store. I'm going to drop the link below. Should you want to purchase any of these, if you purchase from that store, we will get a small cut. But we're going to go ahead and check our tread depth here. So this one is below a 3mm, but not quite a 2. We're at about the same there. And we're at about a 3 there. So you always want to check across the entire surface of the tread. Make sure the tires are wearing evenly. These are wearing pretty evenly. When he does get his tires replaced, unfortunately I can't do them. I don't have a tire machine. But it is always recommended that you get your wheels aligned when you get tires. So you'll see here we're at 3/32, 4/32, and again around 4/32. So he is going to be due for tires. The rears aren't much better, so I'm going to recommend to him that he goes and gets 4 tires. These are at 5s, but again, you know, it's always better to replace tires at sets. This tire's probably also going to be around a 4 or a 5. Yeah, we're at a 5. So I'm going to recommend that he gets 4 tires. He could get away with just doing 2, but like I said, I always like replacing tires in sets. These tires probably were not rotated enough. That's why we're seeing a little bit of a difference from front to rear. If you're religious on your rotations, all 4 of your tires should wear at the same rate. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to look at our rotors. We're going to see if there's any excessive corrosion. I don't see any on the front. The back doesn't look terrible, but there's definitely a nice rust slip on there. But then when we get to these pads, there is nothing left of this friction material. This is almost metal to metal. And that gets back to what I was telling you about when we looked at our brake fluid and saw that it was low. This is definitely why it's low, because if you look at how far that brake piston, the caliper piston is pushed out, all that brake fluid is now in that piston. So he is in a dire need of a set of brakes. Let's see if this side is the same. Very well should be. Yes, so he is in a dire need of brakes. Now while we're in here, we're going to look at our steering rack boot, make sure that's not torn. We're going to be looking at our axle boots, outer and inner. They do not appear to be torn on this side. We're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to look for any grease. We don't see any. This is the really long axle here, so you'll see it's all the way in there, but it appears to be okay. So now we're going to go ahead. We're going to get under the car. We're going to check these sway bar end links, because I have a feeling we're going to have some issues here in the end link department. All right, guys, let's lay down on our creeper. Again, I'll put one of these in my Amazon store too. This makes going under cars an absolute breeze. So we're going to go ahead, come under here, and we're going to start looking at our sway bar end links. Now, the easiest way to check your end link is to grab the sway bar and pull down. I can't really get a good angle on it right here, so let's try right here. And this one on this side appears to be tight. If it was loose, you'd feel the whole sway bar move, and you would hear a noise as well. So if you remember, we heard it very loudly from the driver's side. So I have a feeling that this one is going to be bad. And yes, it is. Let me get you set up on the tripod, see if I can make it make the noise. Alright. So let's get under. Again, on our creeper here. And we're going to pull down on this. Hear that? That play is coming from one of these joints on this sway bar end link. So again, you're going to grab your sway bar like this, and you're just going to pull down. And there you really hear that noise. We're going to double check this one, because now I got a better angle at it. And this one is tight. Alright, so we have a bad left front sway bar end link. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to grab our pry bar, we're going to check these lower ball joints, make sure they're okay as well. Alright guys, so I went ahead and I checked these ball joints off camera. They are tight. Let me wait for the light to come on here. The easiest way to check these is you put a pry bar in between here, in between the steering knuckle and the control arm, and you pry down, and you should not feel any type of play in this lower control arm, meaning this lower control arm should not move when you pry down on it. So both of these ball joints were good. While we're under here, we are just going to check the oil pan as best we can without removing this shield for leaks. I don't see any. We're going to check our axle seals here on the differential housing of the transaxle. I don't see any leaks there. We're going to check here by the oil filter and the oil cooler. Here you'll see we have a little bit of seepage at the front corner of this oil pan. That's not a huge deal. That doesn't look like it's a leak that's going to produce a drip. It's just slight seepage. That may even be remnants from an oil change that maybe was not cleaned off correctly on this oil cooler. We're just going to come under a little further. We're We're going to check back here, check the back side of the engine for any leaks, the back of the timing cover, things like that. Everything under here looks okay. We do have a little bit of corrosion here on these exhaust flanges. Totally normal for a salt belt car. I don't see anything alarming under here. We just have some basic suspension repairs that need to be done. Like I said, we have that play in this left front sway bar end link. So I am going to recommend that he replaces them in a pair. It just makes sense. If one's bad already, the other one's likely going to be bad soon. So we are just going to recommend that, and the front brakes. So now that we're done up front, let's get these wheels back on. Let's get the front off the ground. Let's jack the back up. We're going to go over the rear suspension. We're going to check the rear shocks, the rear brakes, and see what we got back there. Alright guys, so here we are in the back of the car. Now back here, you don't really need to take the wheel off to see the rear brakes, because there's a rather large amount of room here. But you'll see that the brakes on the back are actually wearing a bit unevenly. We're at about a 3 or a 4 millimeter on the outboard pad, and we got quite a bit more meat on the inboard. So there is something going on here, whether it's caliper slide pins or the brackets are seized or what have you. And now we're going to come look on this side, and we're going to check the same thing, and we're going to see that it's really kind of doing the same thing here. The inboards are wearing a little bit slower than the outboards. So like I said, those slide pins are probably going to be a little stuck. While we're back here, we're just going to take a peek under the car. We're going to look at the shocks. You'll see this side is nice and dry. And then we'll crawl over here, and that side is nice and dry. You can see it through there, and there's not a whole lot of crazy corrosion under here. This is what I would call normal for a rust belt car. So what I am going to do is let the owner know that he doesn't quite need rear brakes yet. He could go a little bit longer. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll wait until the next oil change. And, maybe next time he brings it by, we'll take care of those rears. So I hope this video helps you. If you have a YF Sonata 11 to 14 and you want to go over the car, I hope this kind of gives you an idea of how to check things and things to look for. Hopefully this customer decides he wants to do some services here. We'll make some videos on this car, teach you guys some things, and we'll have fun with it. So please like, share, subscribe. See you next time.